All right, so quick word just about UC Press. We are one of the largest university presses in the US. We're the only one to be associated with a public research institution. We receive the majority of our revenue from book sales and journal subscriptions, with just a very small percentage of support from the University of California. You first-time authors or veteran authors may be surprised to hear that scholarly monographs typically lose money. So they all benefit from subsidy, whether that's in the form of funding from a university press host institution, or from philanthropic or grant support, or even from subsidy that an author can bring in from their institution. So all of us have unique strengths and priorities. What we would want to emphasize here, I'm sure Matt agrees with me, is that you should get to know your editors who work in your areas. We are online, we're at conferences, we're on Twitter. Reach out. We're always happy to hear pitches. That's what we're here for, and what we're excited to talk in more detail about today. So just in very high level terms, I thought I would walk you through some of the trends in the publishing business today, because you as authors are entering that business, and just keeping those contexts in mind is a helpful way for you to think about positioning and packaging your work. So always start with the bad news, beginning with just the consolidation of booksellers. In the wake of the Great Recession, the bankruptcy of Borders, and the decimation of the independent booksellers, Amazon now sells more than half of all books in the US. There just aren't that many bookstores left, and publishers increasingly rely on a single large retailer for the vast majority, in some cases, of their revenue. There's a little bit of good news in there, though. In the last decade, we have seen some rebounding in the independence scene. So your local independent bookstore may now be a really vibrant community space with a carefully curated collection. We've got even the last remaining retail giant, Barnes & Noble, undergoing some pretty significant transformation now. But of course, we just don't know what's going to happen in the post-COVID landscape, so that remains to be seen. Budget squeezes from a number of fronts affect university presses and authors in real ways. On the one hand, except for the very few university presses who have an endowment, most rely on funding from their host institution to close the gap between the cost of producing books and the revenue associated with selling them. Very often, as that gap increases, the level of funding decreases. Then on the other hand, you have library budgets with an increasing share of dollars going almost exclusively to big deal journal packages, right? So there are fewer and fewer monographs being bought year on year. And many libraries often think of themselves as providing access to content and not necessarily building book collections. And also, there are just fewer and fewer outlets for book reviews. This is true in magazines and newspapers, as well as scholarly journals. So we sometimes think about the demise of the book critic and the rise of the blogger. Lots of good news, though. The publishing industry is dynamic and vibrant. We are constantly experimenting and thinking about ways to address some of these challenges in creative ways. Just starting with the boring operational stuff, we can now say scan books that have been out of print for many years and give them a new life. We can print books on demand so that we no longer have to carry inventory of books that are important or crucial to our fields, but they just don't fly off the shelves. Discoverability has changed a great deal with the library catalog, as you probably know, no longer being the first stop for knowledge discovery. It's now driven all about metadata and search engine optimization and even Twitter. But what that means for you as an author is that you are in the absolute best position to advocate for your book and draw buzz to it. You can connect directly with your readers, whether that's in person, if that ever happens again, or on social media across a variety of channels, say if you write for scholarly or popular outlets. So it's never been easier to advocate for your book, and it's never been more essential for an author to join the marketing team. And then open access has been a real boon for publishers and authors alike. The OA model, in essence, moves the paywall from out in front of the customer and recoups all of the costs associated with publication at the front end rather than through book sales at the back end. So the result is a completely free piece of content, a journal article or a book that can be accessed by anyone around the world with an internet connection. It ensures the broadest possible reach and access and usability. And it takes a lot of the financial considerations out of the publishing decision when sales are no longer a factor. And so then I'm hoping throughout the rest of the panel today that we can share some tips and tricks for shaping your book proposal, for thinking about building out your author platform, starting with some of the fun stuff. This is more of the hands-on, less boring publishing operations that could be really helpful for you as you think about putting together your sales pitch, the book proposal. So we'd love to talk with you more in the QA about putting that together, about reaching out to and working with an editor. If we have time, we can talk about the nitty-gritty of putting together your author platform, your brand, and thinking about reaching your future readers before you even write the book. And so with that, I will hand things over to my fellow panelists, and I would love to hop back into the Q&A for a more detailed discussion. Thanks.